leaders continue to criticize President Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. From Australia to Malaysia, officials have continued to reject the move.
We're sticking to the relevant UN resolutions. They make clear that the status of Jerusalem needs to be negotiated as part of negotiations on a two-state solution. We do not agree with the decision that was taken yesterday evening.
The Australian government is committed to a two-state solution whereby the Israeli people and the Palestinian people can live in peace side by side within internationally recognised boundaries.
We must stand up and express our thoughts out loud so the world can hear the voice of the Muslims in Malaysia, that we strongly reject the decision to make Jerusalem the capital of Israel.
We think that the future of Jerusalem must be settled as part of the negotiated agreement between Israel and the Palestinians and as part of the two-state solution that we're all working for.
Let's bring in Matthew RJ Brodsky, Middle East analyst at Wikistrat, and our senior diplomatic correspondent, Nina Larsen, who joins us here in studio. Nina, there was a State Department briefing in which a lot of questions were asked about what it means, and you followed this briefing very closely, and it didn't seem like there was a very clear answer.
Yes, the State Department seems terribly confused, and the press corps that covers these kinds of things also very, very confused. And I don't think I've ever seen a briefing where very seasoned reporters are saying, can you explain in layman's terms what this actually means? And the State Department simply wasn't able to provide much clarity. And for example, there were very nitty-gritty details like, say, is someone's passport now, if they're born in Jerusalem, does it say Jerusalem, Israel? And that might seem like a minor point.
It's a big complaint for Americans that live in Israel, that they can't list Israel on their passport, if, like you said, if they're born in Jerusalem. Yes. I've heard that quite a lot.
There are all sorts of nuances and details that aren't addressed, of course, in a simple presidential statement, but this is the kind of ramifications that you're going to see, the domino effect. This is a very, very complicated issue. It goes way beyond anything President Trump wants to announce. We're talking about the Department of State, and that is, of course, under the auspices of his administration, but it is, you know, there are seasoned diplomats here, and this is what they do day to day, and it's going to make their job very, very complicated.
Matthew, to that point, we know Trump has sort of downplayed the importance of diplomacy and of the State Department. Do you think this is the State Department pushing back against them, the so-called deep state, or do you think this is just taking its time to get government policy going?
I mean, I think in part it is a bit of State Department pushback because, I mean, that's nothing new, and we've seen that throughout the administration, especially on anything that has to do with the Middle East. But Nina is right. This is an incredibly complex issue to have to discuss. I've done this on several international news organizations, and it's clear, even from the package you showed of ministers making speeches around the world, that they really have no idea what they're speaking about themselves. And I mean, it's clear with what Trump said. He made it very clear, not just a footnote, but he said this part is very important in the speech that said it doesn't prejudge the end of negotiations for Palestinians. In other words, to have to get into a debate, which I don't think the State Department is frankly cut out to do, on the idea of, okay, West Jerusalem was actually 15 square miles before 1967. Are we talking about moving an embassy there? Are we talking about East Jerusalem that Jordan expanded? Or are we talking about the 4/10 of a mile that is the holy city? People don't get that, and you know, and the protests that you see, the leaders, I think, in a lot of the Middle East, they understand. And you can tell which countries have an interest in trying to stoke passions and inflame their people when they choose to lie and allow this to go on, because they allow this fiction to continue. And for the Palestinian side, the Palestinians themselves, Mahmoud Abbas, they know what the deal is on this. If the Palestinians are essentially saying, Israel, you can't have an embassy in West Jerusalem, where the Knesset's been, where they are not supposed to have any territorial demand, then we're really not talking about borders in a negotiation. We're not talking about territory in a negotiation. They're talking about Israel's right to exist. And that, again, as always, gets back to be the crux of the matter. I don't think the State Department, though, understands that.
Matthew, one of the leaders that I think has been so intriguing is King Abdullah of Jordan. And Jordan, of course, has a relationship with Israel and close relationship with the Trump administration. And there was King Abdullah saying that we can't risk anything that would hurt people's access to the holy sites in Jerusalem. I'm paraphrasing here. Well, there's nothing in this that would change that. So what does he gain by stressing this? Is it a matter just to give something to the Palestinian diaspora in Jordan, while at the same time not saying anything too controversial?
See, I think what Trump gains, first of all, is this is what he feels passionately about. And he's a Kishka gut reaction kind of president. And luckily for Israel, he likes them, at least for now. But that seems to be a long-standing issue. On the policy level, though, I think what he's done is actually really important. If the policymakers could stand back in Washington and understand the dynamic in 2000, and 2008, and 2014, these were all times where Palestinian leadership was presented with American mediation, with actual plans for an end of the conflict. And they either said no or they just had no response. The Palestinians have decided that what they want to do is internationalize the conflict. They've believed that time is on their side. What Trump has done is seized the initiative with this. He's basically said, time isn't on your side. In fact, there are consequences for not negotiating.
And one of the consequences we know is the State Department telling U.S. citizens that are traveling abroad, don't do it now, it's really dangerous. I imagine there are Americans right now who think, why is it in the U.S. interest to make this move if it puts U.S. citizens in danger, Nina? Really quickly, if you can answer that very big question.
Well, exactly. I mean, again, it's the State Department and it's a bureaucracy, and they're being as cautious as they can possibly be. But it's a worldwide caution. That's the language they're using. But there hasn't been this kind of worldwide warning to Americans since the beginning of the Iraq War.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's the gravity of this decision.
All right. Thanks, Nina Larsen, our senior diplomatic correspondent here in studio with us, and Matthew RJ Brodsky, Middle East analyst at Wikistrat. Thank you for joining us as well. And still to come, fire crews say the conditions in Southern California are the worst they've ever faced. Winds have reached hurricane-level speeds, intensifying and spreading the flames. We will have the latest.
And Democratic Senator Al Franken has announced he will step down following sexual misconduct allegations. A lot of Democrats were shocked by this one. We'll get into it in a bit.